What's up, y'all? It is Sunday, September 8th. I am LTJ Reeves. This is Throwing Light. And if you're not throwing light, you're not acting right. Tonight, I've got my IMO brother all the way over in Australia, Igor, that's going to be on today. And we're going to be talking about community. But before we get there, I do want to remind everybody that Asheville in Austin, Texas, Asheville Sexual Health and Wellness is a resource down here in our community that helps provide resources for people that are in the queer community and other people that are allies, resources to get the health care they need. They do STD testing. They have support systems. They even have a food bank where you can, pick up food if you need to. And so if you want to also donate to them and help them continue to do these wonderful things for the community, go to ashevilleatx.org. With that being done and said, Igor, what are you up to? Tell everyone hello.
Hello, everybody. It's great to be here. Thank you for having me.
Okay, so it has been, let's see here, almost 4 months since we've seen each other at IML, right?
Jeez, that's a
You
long time.
know, let's go ahead and kind of talk about a little bit about how you got into the community, like what led you to your leather journey.
Uh, it would have been somewhat maybe over 10 years ago uh, when I met my current partner and husband. He had some leather in his wardrobe. I didn't know much about the leather scene, let alone the gay scene in general, because I was still coming out. And yeah, having seen some of the leather in his wardrobe, I asked him, what's that about? So pair of chaps, a jock, a harness, the basics that everybody has in their wardrobe if you're into any kind of leather. And he said, try it on and tell me what you think. So first time I put on the whole outfit, had the chaps on, they fit me perfectly, believe it or not, put the harness on, and everyone has a slightly similar experience. It's that, oh, this feels, you feel the weight of it, you feel the pressure of it, you feel the texture of it, and it just kind of encompasses a lot of things that well, for me personally, that I liked. And there was a masculine aspect to it because I've always grown up knowing that leather is quite a masculine look. We've all grown up with a leather idol of our own with Tom of Finland, or just looking at the biker look. It's always been on the forefront of my mind, something that I've liked. Never thought I got into it like that. Mind you, when I first put on the gear, I didn't know much about the scene or the community here at all. It was all very new to me. So I was exploring, experiencing everything for the first time. So it took me a while to get into the scene here. Yeah, it's been quite the journey.
Oh, coming back to IML now. So we got to meet during that journey. What number were you? Where were you? Do you remember? You do remember your number.
33.
33. I was one. Okay, so we know that. So we weren't
Yeah, I
as
know you are.
like you bonded. You had more time to bond with people that were in your group. But we did get an opportunity
Absolutely.
to have some time and some interaction with each other. I just think you're an amazing person, of course. And so since IML, what have you been up to?
Uh, Once IML finished, I had a 2 month mark until my step down, which was at the end of July. So I had time to just acclimatize back to my community and then just prepare for that step down. Um, the How do I put this? My step down was during Sydney Leather Week, which is an initiative that I started alongside with my husband, to kind of showcase the fetish community here in Sydney. Last year it started off as a weekend with the reintroduction of the Ms. Sydney Leather title. This year it was a week, so a bit longer than a weekend. And next year it's going to be a festival, hence the shirt,
Awesome.
which is going to showcase the whole community. So it's when you're showcasing so much of the community, it's very, very difficult to do it in a week because there are so many different parts of the community. There are so many events and people that want to promote things. And we want to make sure that everyone gets their time in the light. So yeah, it was pretty much all hands on deck to make sure the City Leather Week was a success, which it really, really was. And yeah, just prepare for the step down, make sure that, I've I've done everything I wanted to do in my title term, prepared for what came after, and yeah, that's been the main focus. Then and
So
now I've enjoyed a month off, and now it's back into it.
a month off. That's what I'm doing after my step down. I told everybody I'm taking November off because my step down's in October. But your step down was in
Yeah,
July or was it in June?
end of July.
It was at the end of July. Okay, okay, okay.
End of July.
So, and then that's it. So, just out of curiosity for the rest of, for people that, are curious like me, what are some of the titles that are over the continent that you know of?
What, down in this southern part of the hemisphere, or
Yeah,
just
yeah.
in
What are some
Australia in
other,
general?
is there, you're doing like, is there a New Zealand like leather community?
Well, there is a community over in Auckland, but they're more of a social community and it's still building. There was a gentleman, Damien, who used to live in Auckland, who started up the community there. He's since moved to Melbourne, here in Australia, but that community is still going strong. But they don't really have, there are lots of little communities in the Southern Hemisphere, but they don't necessarily have titles or any kind of representation like that, which is something that I wanted to shed a light on if I had the uh, responsibility of an international stage, which I don't, which is great, but I still want to make sure that those communities are supported and that they have that. We want to build that relationship with those neighboring countries to make sure that they have their time in the spotlight as well. So New Zealand, no, but it's a work in progress. We're hoping to work with them. Within Australia itself, main cities have titles. So Sydney has their leather titles. They have an inclusive title, which is the pride of the hide. They have that's pretty much in Sydney. Then you've got places like Melbourne, which have their Leather Man, which is their bar title. Then you have they have a rubber title as well. Same as Adelaide, they have rubber, leather. Queensland, this coming weekend is their week of leather, so they're going to have I think they're the only state that have a boy, a girl title, as well as a Mr. and Ms. And they're introducing a MX title for the first time, so a Kingster title. So in terms of titles, there aren't massive amount, but there's a decent amount for the size of the community that we have. We don't want to have more titles than we have representatives for those titles. So it's good to build upon what we currently have and make room for things in the future when we have the opportunities to do that.
Are there other titles that have an IML track or just yours?
The product, mine has a history of it from when it was first started back in 2008. The Pride of the Hide was two IML classes ago for the first time. A lot of the Aussies don't necessarily travel out to IML for whatever reasons. We would love to see more representation of that. I think next year there will be more. I know at least two titles going, Mr. Australia Leather, Shane Stevens, and the current Sydney Mr. Leather, Timo. They're both going to be representing. I'm hopeful that the Leather Make 2024 in Melbourne, he comes down as well. Should I say? So there's a hope and there's a push for more people, especially from the Southern Hemisphere, to have a presence at IML, because it was one of my. It was interesting to see that there were only two contestants from half of the world on an international stage.
Yeah.
And it was a little bit disheartening in some regards. I mean, I wish I would have had some other people from Australia that were there with me representing, but they weren't for their own reasons, which is fair enough. But I do want to see more of that representation. That was one of the things that I walked away from IML really, really embracing the fact that there is so much more to this than we no. And I went into IML not knowing a lot. And it was very, very eye-opening. And it's like, it's good to know that there is support and there's a network and there's like-minded people out there everywhere. And we need to know that we all exist so that we can go to each other's communities and be part of it. Because that's one thing that I wanted, that was one of the messages that I wanted to get across, especially with my top 20 speech, was we have a community in Australia. You can come visit us. We do exist. We will welcome you. Please come down.
So, specifically, we talked about discussing community, and what does that mean to you? And how is community a universal message?
Community is an interesting thing. And there was a definition that I used in my step down speech, which spoke volumes to me. And the the line is a community is defined by people who show up for it. Anything else is just a fantasy. So people who don't actually participate in community aren't really part of the community, because you can talk about community all you want, but unless you're there in it, unless you want to make changes that you want to see in that community, you need to be there. You need to be present. You can't just talk about, oh, this is what community should be like. It's only going to be like represented by the people that are there. So to me, community is the people that turn up, is the people that connect, is the people that actually interact with one another to actually make something of it. I mean, when you think of the fetish community in general, there are lots of aspects to the community. There's your socials, there's your play parties, there's your dance parties, there's the public and there's the private, and anything in between. And it's good to have each of those spaces, but when you try to have all those spaces in one, they don't necessarily work. Because I've been to a party that had its social, had its play, had its dance and everything, and you didn't know where you were or what you were doing. It was a little bit overstimulating, I think the word would be used. But it's interesting that we have these things, because these things need to exist, and we need to embrace each part of it, because it is a part of who we are and how we express ourselves.
So, post step down now, and you said you took a month off, but okay, so how does your legacy continue? And how are you? I think that the post IML experience should be like maybe a self-esteem booster for us, maybe, or a motivator that we are doing great work in the community. How are you continuing right now?
So after the month off, well, pseudo off, and I've in my step down speech, I mentioned that I'm going to be the support for the next person, or anyone that needs me to be their support. I came into IML with great community support, but not with the support from people that could have helped me to make IML a little bit easier or help me understand it a little bit better. I'm going to be that person for the next generation, whether it is my Sash son or my grandson or whoever, even if it's a different title that I'm not even a part of. I'm there to support whichever Australian wants to better themselves, to have a more positive experience, one with their title term and with IML if they choose to go down that path. So within that, that's a big focus of mine, because the coaching part of what I do in my life and how I'm going to keep developing that, that's a big part of it. I'm also going to help. I've actually gone back to the committee for Sydney Leathermen, who is my home club and who's the home club for the title. I've taken on a secretary and membership officer role with them, so I can help them expand and get better and have the support that they need. Little things like that. There are little events that are planned throughout the year as well that will be a little bit of a platform for the new title holders to propel themselves for. So one of the things that I'm doing myself is something called Boundless Conversations. It is talking about different parts of history within the community that we have lost, because there's a lot of history that's been lost in our community here. And it's, speaking to the people that have been through communities in the past to tell us what their experiences are. What were the motorcycle clubs like back in Sydney when the fake scene started to, kind of take shape? Have experiences from that. Where did they meet? What did they do? Then talk about the different associations that existed within the community that, either are still around or that folded for whatever reason. It's good to know the history of where we've come from and then where we can move forward with that. So it's just about having conversations about anything. To start off will be history, but the topics will range from anything to understanding different parts of the scene. If there's a certain kink or a certain group of people that you don't understand or necessarily associate with, how can we make you understand that a little bit better? How can we have this conversation that we can, it's more of a discussion than it is a talk. That makes sense.
That makes perfect sense. Let me backtrack a little bit and go back to being, Australia's only representation in our class. Um, Go ahead and open up about that experience, because you're actually the sole contestant from a whole entire continent that competed, and you did well. You did amazing. You made top 20. Um, what was going through your head when you got to Chicago, and we were all starting the competition? You walked into the room. You flew. You came a long way. I think the longest way to come compete in this competition. Um, you know what I'm saying? Like, there, to some degree, there's a bit of elevation to that. Like, and you almost kind of said, like, you're coming back with, I'm not going to say pressure, but you have a shot to make a impact for your entire continent. You did. Like, let's just talk about that journey from you getting to the opening ceremony to getting to the end of the competition and showing up.
IML was quite the experience. I mean, I'm sure you can agree. I think all of us contestants had a slightly different experience. But I came there with a purpose. That purpose was to represent my community, and that was my driving force. That's what kept me going. Um, Even though they were all so far away, it was something that I constantly reminded myself of, I'm doing this for them, I'm showing up for them. I want people to know that we're here. And, one of the lucky things I think I had with my title term was the fact that I went to Folsom, Europe last year. And there I got to meet some of the title holders. So I met Jeff Brewer, Mr. Colorado. I met a whole bunch of European title holders, Tom Keller, Nacho, Jesus. I met all these guys that I never knew. And even when I was there, I was a fish out of water because everyone knew each other. Everyone, when you're in Europe or in America, all title holders kind of know each other or know of each other. I was so far away from it that it was very overwhelming and intimidating, to say the least. But because I had that experience, it helped me to not have that experience at IML. So I went in knowing a few people. So my experience was a little bit easier to transition. So I wasn't the only person there that didn't know anybody. That made it really, really, I guess, comforting. But yeah, once Wednesday rolled over in the Congress Plaza and seeing the lobby just, chockers full of people checking in and just having conversations, and it was starting to become more and more real, the overwhelming feeling of, oh, fuck, what are we doing here? It is a massive head fuck for anyone who has ever been to IML. Like, I've never been to Chicago, never been to a single IML, and never competed on that level. So I was like a triple virgin. It was a lot to take in. But I had a few people around me that kept me grounded, that help support me to guide me through that whole process. Orientation was great. I mean, that first photo that we took in the hall, I was standing right next to you, wearing the same pants.
I remember that.
Yeah, it was a really emotional feeling, just being in that room with everybody, and those little ceremonies that we had throughout that whole experience that were very, very enlightening to me. They felt like I could have walked away from the experience on the Sunday before we headed off in the buses uh, to find out the rest of the competition, who the top 20 were and everything. My experience was fulfilled because I thought, I never thought I'd get to do this. Met so many amazing people. I got to push myself by going, doing interviews in front of 9, what seemed like at the time very intimidating judges who were very, very lovely human beings. Being up on stage with Apex and personality, not knowing what to expect. It was a great experience. So I walked away from that. Every time I walked away from any of the things that we were meant to do, I walked away going, I can do that better. I can do that different. I kept propelling myself and pushing myself to be better. And I think that's what made me get into that top 20, because I kept elevating my performance, and performance in quotation marks. But yeah, it was the more we were together, the less alone and the less pressure that there was on me. That's the way I felt about it. The unfortunate thing was, like you said, we were all in our groups, and you got to really know your group, but outside of that, you didn't really get to see too much. I wish I would have got to see everybody do everything, see how they did their exit personality, see how they did their speeches, see how they did anything on stage. But you usher from one thing to the next that you don't have time to think about the other person. You're just worrying about the next thing that you're going to be doing.
Yeah.
So,
what is a change that you would like to see in your local community back in Sydney, or and and we kind of maybe hit on this a little bit, but maybe even as the state as a whole, what are some changes you like to see?
it's an interesting one because our scene is constantly changing. There's been a resurgence in the scene, and there's more and more fetish folk coming out of the works, and there's a lot of new groups forming. Like we have the two member-run associations. The Dykes on Bikes, who represent the women, and the Sydney Leather Men, who represent the men. Now we're seeing Sydney Leather Women and Sydney Leather Queers come into the fold. So there are constantly spaces opening up to include a whole wider range of people in the community. It's a tough one, because I'm actually what I'd like to see is currently what's happening now anyway. So it's not like it's something that I don't think will happen, because it is happening. We're currently providing we're creating a lot of different events, a lot of different spaces for a lot of different people, and that's going to continually keep growing. Where it's going to go to, I don't know, but we are expanding as a community here. So there's not too much that I'd say that we're currently missing. I mean, I'd love to see more attendance. I'd love to see more collaboration within the rest of the country. One of the things that I said in my step down speech was, as a national community, when I first joined the scene, as a national community, it was every state for themselves. But when you go to Europe, for example, every country kind of works together, or they're at least collaborating together and they're supporting one another. And here it wasn't like that. there's been a massive shift here, especially with all the current title holders that have been during my term. We've all made a push to change that. So there's a lot more collaboration within just our national community to make sure that we're all supported. That if the pups need a hand with something, we'll support them. If the men need a support with something, if the dogs need support with something, we're here to collaborate with one another a lot more. And as time goes on, I think that bond's only going to get a lot stronger. So,
All right, that's awesome. So we're towards the end of the show, and at this point, Igor asks the same question to everybody. What's something in the community as a whole? We're talking about the whole community here. Do you think we're not shedding enough light on?
what was that last part? Sorry.
So, what is something you think that's happening in the community that we're not bringing enough light on?
That's a tough one because how many episodes have you done now? There are so many topics
This
that I
is
think that you haven't.
49. This is 49.
49. I thought it's been more.
It's 49. It's 49 so far.
Okay. Okay.
Do you have an
Um,
answer?
I don't have an answer because there's nothing really that hasn't been covered, has there?
I,
Nothing
you
that I
know,
can think of that hasn't really
there's
been.
some truths to that, but I think there's some things that we can pick apart. Oh, okay. So the majority, let me tell you what I've gotten majority of lately is voting. But we have an election.
Voting.
That's been a big thing.
Yes.
Um, I'm always, me as a person, I'm always, making sure making sure our trans community is, feeling like they want to live, that type of thing. I don't know. They're just there are things, that you are correct that we are covering a lot of topics. But I think there's some that everyone has their level of awareness to what they think is at the forefront and stuff. Like for me too, and I think for me too, like I think there's an overabundance of drugs. That's a whole nother conversation. Someone that is recovering from crystal meth, it's just what you ever think, and but I think the fact of you being on the show and representing Sydney and Australia, this interview is the light with you. This whole interview is light because you're representing and you're not alone anymore. You have us as your brothers, but you did come into this probably the loneliest journey. That's what come on to.
Yeah, it's still here.
But just know that like I was so excited just to get to this point. I know you're busy, I'm busy, but you being on the show has opened doors to a new understanding of where you're coming from and what's going on. So you are what we need to shine more light on. You and your community,
Yes, shine more light down south.
everything that but on the real, everything you talked about, I didn't know all of that. You know what I'm saying? And I don't think most people do if they're not over there. And so
Yeah,
it's
that's
been
true.
a valuable, extremely valuable interview. And of course, would love to have you back on here. I actually am going to have Shane on here, like in December,
Yes.
I believe. So, we
Yep.
look, our class is we still got into the next IML class comes in. It's still about us. And, like I said, in any way capacity that I can be for you over here, or if there's something I can do across social media, I got your back. Just know that. Even
Thank
though
you
I
very
grabbed
much.
my
I
heart
appreciate
and my medal, you've got my heart and my medal. I'm even pretending to scrape it off in the camera like they do. I'm gonna put it up here. All right, cool. All right, well, that brings us to the end of the interview. That is this episode of Throwing Light. If you are
Thank
watching,
you very much. It's been an absolute,
yes, thank you, Igor. Thank you for coming on here. And I guess I want to
been an
keep
absolute pleasure.
yeah, and like I said, I
Yeah.
would love to have you back. So that's it, y'all. I'm gonna just go ahead and wrap it up and say this is LTJ Reeves. This has been Throwing Light. And if you're not throwing light, you're not acting right. Goodbye. Goodbye, Igor.
There.